Hello, 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 everyone. This is Danny Ceballos with Unleashed Consulting and the Best Boss Bootcamp podcast. We are delighted to welcome our guest this week, Robyn Hatcher. Welcome, Robyn. We're so excited to get a chance to chat with you.
Hey, Danny. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm going to introduce you, Robyn, a little bit about you, and then ask you to maybe expand on that bio a little bit because there's so many more interesting things that I want you to share with the listeners here. But Robyn is a communication expert, international keynote speaker, coach, and consultant whose mission is to create a stronger personal brands, more inclusive communication cultures, and more engaging and powerful conversations and presentations. She has successfully trained and coached thousands of business professionals and middle managers from Fortune 500 companies and noteworthy brands, including UBS, Equitable, Alliance Bernstein, Morgan Stanley, Lifetime Television, Jones New York, PayPal, Spotify, Con Edison, Hewlett Packard, and many others. Welcome, Robyn.
Thank you, Danny.
I just caught you midstream there.
I
Hey,
know,
Robyn,
right?
I think I confessed to you right before we went on the air that I'm a bit of a fanboy with you.
Mm.
So could you tell folks a little bit about some of your multimedia exposure too?
Yeah, well, I started in this whole industry as an actor first. It was like I was a professional actor. I still am, actually. I call myself a recovering actor because, you never get it out of your system, but you move on. And so I was an actor for a long time, and then I did lots of television commercials. One of my most famous claim to fame is that I did a television commercial that was spoofed on Saturday Night Live with Halle Berry playing me. So that was very cool. Um, I also wrote for 2 daytime soaps. I did wrote for All My Children and One Life to Live. And I was on Good Morning America. I was a guest on Good Morning America. I've done a lot of things in the entertainment field. And then I've morphed and churned and taken the path towards what I do now, which I love, which is speaking and consulting and training.
Right on. Awesome. Awesome. I'm even a bigger fanboy now hearing it directly from you. So wonderful. Yeah. And listeners, I invited Robyn to talk with us because as middle managers, and we know when we're talking about middle managers, we're being very inclusive here. It's anybody that's kind of, you know, to, working for one person and motivating and engaging and supervising others. And there's a lot of breadth to that. So this idea, this concept, this theme that Robyn, that you have really built on of owning while you own it while you hone it, or maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
hone it while you own it. Maybe you can tell us which is that. But that seems like so important and relevant for middle managers. I think about my own experience in management and leadership and the importance of constantly sharpening the saw, right? That's
Right.
so important. And at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, having a leadership presence, leadership gravitas. And
Right.
I think a lot of folks get caught up. It's either one or the other, or I can't do one without, and then we just kind of start spinning and just kind of moving through the motions of the work that we do. So can you tell us a little bit about what own while you hone means?
Yeah, exactly. I love what you just said because it's so true. We get caught in that middle thing. And one of the reasons why we get caught is because we think there is a way. We think
Yeah.
there is a perfect way to be, the perfect manager, the perfect this, and there isn't. The only way to be a good manager is to be a good you. And that's why I created the own it while you hone it, because a lot of people will say, "Oh, don't worry, fake it till you make it." And I hate that phrase
Mm.
because, first of all, you don't want to be a fake, and your brain knows that you don't want to be a fake. And so you say something like fake it till you make it, and your brain is going like, wait, so that means I'm not very good, right? I have to
Right.
pretend to be good.
Mm.
But with own it while you hone it, it's like own what you have, because you can always, as to use your word, sharpen that saw. You
Mhm.
can always improve upon yourself. There are always so many things that you can do, but you were hired for a reason. You were promoted for a reason. Dig down into what those reasons are and own them, and then continually expand on them and
Mhm.
and and grow with it.
Hmm. That's great. Yeah, that's wonderful. And Robyn, what are your thoughts around? I think a lot of folks really struggle. I think because middle managers are on this sometimes on this hamster wheel, if you will, of just getting the work done, right? So getting the
Right.
work done, trying to rise to the challenge, manage all the relationships, including the ones that, the ones that they have, but then they're also managing the relationships that their direct reports have with each other. I mean, there's just so much that I think people lose sight of or aren't able to access what they should be owning. And I'm wondering
Mm,
if you have any. So when you've coached folks and trained folks, how what advice would you give folks to kind of surface that, to bring that up
yeah.
again?
Yeah. I actually do call it, I call it excavate. You have to excavate
Yes.
your
Yes.
gold. It's like you have this gold on and what we often do is we cover ourselves in clay because that clay piece is like what we think people want or what we think people need.
Mhm.
And we neglect the gold. Now the gold, what I bring out of my clients is what differentiates you? What is your why? Why do you do your job? And why do you do it differently than other people? What are the values that you live by? What are the value that you bring to the office? And it's all going to be different. Some people's value is that they help people get along. Some people's value is that they can save people time or save people money. Some people is like you bring morale, or you're very clear and you get very granular about things. So you're very specific about things. So you bring organization, or you help people to see the bigger picture. You're creative. So really to excavate what are those skills. So it's not your job skills. It's not your job title. It's not it may not even be on the job description. But what you want to isolate and identify and excavate are the parts of you that make you you and make you unique in the way that you do your job and the way that you show up for the company. And that is very individualized. So what I love to do in my coaching is to pull that out. And sometimes it has to do with how you were raised.
Mm.
What are some of the things that you grew up with? I've uncovered so many things in my clients of like, oh, this is because my father did this. This is because when I was 8 years old, I was like this. And that's why when you bring that juiciness, when you bring that gold to the office, then you stand out in a way that, people can then come to you for who it is that you are and what it is that you bring to
Mm.
the table.
Mhm. Mhm. It's interesting. Some of the work that I've done in the Best Boss Boot Camp and in training and is working with folks to access and to value their authenticity, right?
Mhm.
Which I think is the gold that you're talking about. And I'm wondering how you think about this. I think oftentimes, and my coworker agrees with me, by the way, that sometimes that gold can be tarnished, if you will. And here's where I'm going with this, Robyn, and I'm wondering what you think about it. So that sometimes that authenticity, if not used or thought of or harnessed correctly, can actually get in one's own way. It can actually not
Right.
be the right thing. Yeah. Okay. So I
Yeah.
start thinking about effectiveness, right? So how do you kind of bring all that together?
I
Same?
love that we're totally on the same page because I really shy away now from using the word authentic because
Yes.
it has that wrong connotation. Because so what I'll say to people is like, okay, you can be authentic or you can be effective. Which one is it? So authentically, we were all born naked.
Mhm.
It's like, but I'm not going to go to work
Yes.
naked. It's like authentically, I'm much more comfortable in my pajamas, but I'm not going to wear them to work. So it's like there is a line. It's like, yes, you want to bring your best self, not
Mhm.
just yourself.
Mhm.
So a lot of times people will then, take that word authentic and say, well, I was being my authentic self. I don't understand why they can't deal with it. And I feel like that's gotten us into a lot of trouble.
Well, I want to thank you for being inside my head because you basically have been saying, and sometimes that message does not land well with folks, right?
I
So
know.
but it's about nuancing and getting clear, and I think also, and I think you would agree that sometimes being 100% authentic is the effectiveness, right?
Mhm,
Sometimes,
mhm.
right? So to dig deep and to say, well, what is it exactly that I want and need from this experience? And it
Right.
may be, so I'm, as a gay man, sometimes for me, it's the example that I use is sometimes I'm on a plane and if I'm sandwiched between people and they ask me who I am, or, when we used to talk to each other, I make some decisions in the moment about how authentic I'm going to be because I'm going to be stuck with this
Right.
person for a while now, right?
Right.
So, and I don't think that's being disingenuous or inauthentic. It's about owning. It's about
Mhm.
owning my authenticity. Yeah, you
Right.
would agree? Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. I totally agree. And, there are some times that you do need to or want to be out there and
Yes.
clear. And then there are some times that you want to take your pajamas off and wear something else.
Yes, exactly.
So, and that's perfectly okay. And I know that people push back with that, but there are ways to bring your, I mean, what is that? Bring your whole self. That's the language that's being used now. Bring your whole self to work. And but who is your whole? It's like you're never one whole self. It's like you
Mhm.
just can't do that. That's I don't know.
Yeah, I so much want to be like, yes, you're on, and jump right in, but I'm also aware this is a podcast, and I want to make sure that because I am so with you, Robyn, so with you. In fact, I'll say to folks, you don't want my whole self.
Right.
You really don't. It's very few occasions that I bring all of that. You
Right.
want my most effective self, which happens to be
Right.
a very close cousin to my authentic self.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, great.
Yeah.
How about what's so a lot of folks that I work with, again, middle managers, the audience that's listening to this podcast right now, there's work and a need to have leadership presence. And
Mm.
sometimes people will come to me and say, I need my manager to have more leadership presence.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, yeah, because you've done a lot of work, around this. So what is your definition of leadership presence, and how do we hone that?
Yeah. I get called in a lot, like, about executive presence. They need more executive presence. And so what I interpret that, and I actually looked it up, like, what is executive presence? And it's like, it's having enough gravitas, having enough being trustworthy, being able to present yourself in a way that looks professional. I mean, so those are the three things. I even have a more specific definition of executive presence. But so what I look at is specifically the gravitas part, because what it is, and when you and to get gravitas, you have to have confidence.
Yes.
And so that's one of the things I feel like what people are totally missing when it's around executive presence. So a lot of people will come to me and so they'll give me this, okay, this is the person who needs the presence training, and I'll talk to them. And it's like they have some barrier that
Mm.
they think, I mean, right back to what we were talking about with that authentic presence or whatever, that authentic self, they have a fear that people are judging them around that authentic self. And therefore, they are not even showing up like 80%. I mean, 20%. They're only giving you like 40% of them. And what I try to do is marry what we were talking about before, marry that authentic self with the value that they bring, and then give them the maybe the vocal inflection shift,
Mhm.
the physical body language shift, the content shift that is going to then represent that value and effectiveness in a clearer way. So it's like, no, I'm not asking you to be inauthentic. I'm not asking you to leave stuff at home, but I'm asking you to pinpoint the value that you bring to the organization and then figure out a way to represent that 100%, and with that gravitas, with that strength, with that confidence that is going to say, yeah, this is who I am and this is why it's important. Because I really feel like with that inauthentic or authentic stuff, it really has to do with our mindset and our attitude and how confidently we present it. If we are questioning ourselves whether this is good, then the people that you're interacting with are going to question it because there's that whole mirror neuron thing going on. It's like they're going to be like, oh, she's not really confident in herself, so that must be the executive presence problem, or that inauthentic problem. But I think it's much more nuanced than that. And I feel like just by having a coach to develop and show and share the value that they bring, that can then help the manager speak and present themselves differently.
I love that. I love that. It's for me that it invites. I think we're inviting listeners to, and there's so many ways of doing this. Like you said, whether it's working with a coach, but to get clear on what
Yeah,
the value. And you started off with this, so we're circling back to what to get clear on the value that you bring,
right,
and sometimes we understand that, or it's supported through feedback, but sometimes it's not. Right.
right.
So I don't. I think. I'm wondering what you think. I won't encourage listeners to go to their bosses necessarily. Okay, I'm going to say, what's my value here? That's the work,
Uh-huh.
right? We have to do internally for ourselves. Then we can seek feedback and say, get it reinforced and identify our blind spots and all that. But boy, oh boy, we got to lead ourselves first before we
Yeah.
go into this, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And sometimes I actually you don't go to not your bosses. Sometimes I suggest people do what I call a brand audit
Mm.
and ask maybe 10 people to anonymously just say, what are the 3 adjectives that come to mind when you think of me? Because a lot of times we do, because that's the way our brain works. Our brain tends to forget all the good stuff we do and remember all the negative stuff that we do. And so a lot of times we don't really know how we're showing up. And so you can be very pleasantly surprised, or maybe not so pleasantly surprised. But if you ask people, like, give me 3 adjectives or 3 phrases that come to mind when you think of me at work, and then you cull all that information, and you can come up with what your brand value is, or what your differentiator is, and how you're showing up. If you like it, then lean into it. If you don't like it, well,
It's the work.
you can learn how to change it.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, Robyn, this has been terrific. I think you brought some really keen insight. I think we went much further than what we originally planned, and some keen insight around self love, self appreciation, self worth needing to happen before we go into you call it what you call it a brand audit. I do the same kind of exercise, and I just call it like an informal 360. But you're absolutely
Mm,
right, just to go around and to pull that
mhm,
information in. But you've got to do that for yourself first, because you've
right,
got, first of all, going around asking 3 adjectives for people means that you've got to have some courage and some sense of who you are, right? Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Robyn, I'm wondering, before we let you go, can you tell us, first of all, if you have a favorite resource or anything that you can point listeners to if they're interested in learning some more about what we discussed,
About
or
what we
or just
discussed, you can
something
reach
else?
out to me. It's like one of the things that I love is to really dig down into what's happening in our brains. That's something that I love exploring, and one of the ways that I explore that is through reading a lot of books on brain science. And one of the most contemporary books on brain science that I have found is called 7.5 Lessons About the Brain, and it's a
Oh,
really short book. I love it because she just talks these 7.5 lessons, and then about that type of thing. And also David Rock wrote a really interesting book called Your Brain at Work, and so yeah, that. And yeah, so those are some of the things that I like to recommend. And then on my website, there's all types of, like, when I talk about the physical, I have a whole list of a whole video series on body language, and how you can improve your body language so that you represent that confidence and that gravitas that is part of the executive presence.
awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, you did, and lent yourself to the. So, right before I forget, do you know the author of 7.5 Lessons?
Yeah, 7.5 Lessons is by Lisa Feldman Barrett.
Rita Feldman Barrett. Great. Okay. And
Lisa.
how Great. And how can people best reach you, access the resources that you talked about, your website? What's the best way of getting to you?
Yeah, go to my website, robynhatcher.com. Robyn with a Y, Hatcher.com. And go to the resources. I have a book called Standing Ovation Presentations, which is all about knowing what your actor type is, your style, your communication style. So you can learn about that. You can take the quiz on that also. And reach out to me on LinkedIn because that's my platform of choice.
Wonderful, wonderful. And listeners, you know this, but just so Robyn knows, we will be sharing these resources with you. So people will be able to, you don't have to remember Robyn with a Y because we're going to remind you of that. So you'll be able to reach her. Awesome, Robyn. Well, thank you so much. This has been what I knew it would be, which was a lot of fun and opened up as many questions as it did answer them. So I look forward to continuing this conversation in other ways with you.
Me too. Thanks so much, Danny, for having me.
All right, awesome. Bye, everybody. This is Danny Ceballos with Unleashed Consulting and the Best Boss Bootcamp podcast. We'll see you again real soon. Bye now.